We hadn't completed a thoroughly reading. Like, we don't read as thoroughly as Thoreau reads his books. He's more thorough than we are, and he's gotten through.
Right.
And he's through with his books, and he was thorough in writing his books, and we haven't gotten through his books. So we're not through reading Thoreau. And to do a more thorough job, we'll continue. Thoreau is one of a million awake enough for effective intellectual exercise. Only one in a million is effective. He was effective. And only 1 in 100 million to a poetic and divine life. To be awake is to be alive. I have never yet met a man who was quite awake, and how could I have looked him in the face? So we're trying to wake up like Thoreau to be as effective as 1 in 1 million, or some people 100 million. So asking a lot. We must learn to reawaken and keep ourselves awake, not by mechanical aids, but by an infinite expectation of the dawn, which does not forsake us in our soundest sleep. I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by a conscious endeavor. Can we elevate ourselves with a conscious endeavor? It is something to be able to paint a particular picture or to carve a statue, and so to make a few objects beautiful. It is far more glorious to carve and paint the very atmosphere and medium through which we look, which morally we can do, to affect the quality of the day. That is the highest of arts. Should we just improve the quality of our day and call that art? Should we have an art of living? Every man is tasked to make his life, even in its details, worthy of the contemplation of his most elevated and critical hour. If we refused, or rather used up, such paltry information as we get, the articles would distinctly inform us how this might be done. We talk too much on here. We're listening to Sunday Baroque. You won't go broke listening to Sunday Baroque. You can just listen Sunday on Sundays. Mm-hmm. Oh, dear, your phone's connected to Bluetooth. You can listen to the Bluetooth. I'll just shut it off there. Instead of that connected, your phone was. How? It's the last one connected. We are talking about the mechanics of the iPhone, forsaken by the mechanical aids, not by mechanical aids of Bluetooth, but by an infinite expectation of the dawn. Not with such paltry information as that of the phone. As we get the articles would distinctly inform us how this might be done. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear, nor did I wish to practice resignation, unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life, and to live sturdily and Spartan-like. as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner, and reduce it to its lowest terms, and if it prove to be mean, why then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it, and publish its meanness to the world, or if it were sublime, to know it by experience, and to be able to give a true account of it in my next excursion. For most men, it appears to me, are in a strange uncertainty about it, whether it is of the devil or of God, and have somewhat hastily concluded that it is the chief end of man to glorify God and enjoy himself forever. Enjoy him forever, or enjoy himself like a dandy. We had discovered that we woke up and had a bunch of mechanical aids running, like with the Bluetooth, and we had paltry information coming in. So we went to the woods. I went to the woods within the paper of Walden. We're reading from Henry David Thoreau's Walden. I went to the woods within the book Walden because I wished to live deliberately and to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. We're looking at the core roots of transcendentalism, American transcendentalism. And we find that it may all due to Taylor. We found the root person behind the whole thing was Taylor. Here he is. He's the one who influenced not only Shelley and Blake and Coleridge in England, but then he influenced Emerson and Bronson Alcott, because he translated Plato and the Platonist, Neoplatonist, Platonist, and Platonus and Proclus, which is just transcendentalism, is just Platonism. So we're just reading Plato, because Thoreau is just a footnote to Plato, it turns out. But we are not through with reading Plato. That's the problem. He never finished reading Plato. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and to see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. Of course, Plato believed in the immortality of the soul. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear, nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life, and to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms, and if it proved to be mean, then why? Why then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it, and publish its meaning to the world, and if it were sublime, to know it by experience, and be able to give a true account of it in my next excursion. For most men, it appears to me, are in a strange uncertainty about it, whether it is of the devil or of God, and have somewhat hastily concluded that it is the chief end of man here to glorify God and enjoy him forever. Well, I had said joy himself forever in terms of modern positivistic materialism or dandyism. And still, we live meanly, like ants. Though the fable tells us that we were long ago changed into men, like pygmies we fight with cranes. It is error upon error, and glout upon glout, and our best virtue has for its occasion a superfluous and inevitable wretchedness. Our life is frittered away by detail. Hmm. Hmm. It seems like my Bluetooth isn't working right. I need to look into the problem. Hers wasn't. It was coming on, and when I wanted the Bluetooth to work in my favor, it went to her phone. It seems I'll have to spend some time fixing it. Wow. This life, our life is fruitlessly frittered away by detail. An honest man has hardly need to count more than his 10 fingers, or in extreme cases he may add his 10 toes, and lump the rest. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. I kind of reject simplicity because I have to have my green tea, which comes from a long distance from Japan. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. I say, let your affairs be as 2 or 3, and not 100 or 1,000. Instead of 1,000,000, count half a dozen, and keep your accounts on your thumbnail. In the midst of this chopping sea of civilized life, such as the clouds and storms and quicksands and 1,001 items to be allowed for, that a man has to live if he would not founder and go to the bottom and not make his port at all. By dead reckoning, he must be a good calculator indeed who succeeds. Calculator. Dead reckoning. He must be a great calculator indeed who succeeds. Simplify, simplify. Instead of 3 meals a day, if it be necessary, eat but 1. Instead of 100 dishes, 5. 100 dishes, 5's a lot. We'll try to do 2, 5 dishes. But sometimes there's too many dishes. We cook too many things. I try to say, don't cook more than one thing. You're upset with the kitchen, tired of being in the kitchen. Just cook one thing and buy one thing. And then cook one thing and then eat one thing. That's monotheism and food philosophy. Monotheism and food philosophy. Instead of 100 dishes, 5, and reduce other things in proportion. Our life is like a German confederacy, made up of petty states, with its boundary forever fluctuating, so that even a German cannot tell you how it is bounded at any moment. The nation itself, with all its so-called internal improvements, which, by the way, are all external and superficial, is just such an unwealthy and overgrown establishment, cluttered with furniture and tripped up by its own traps, ruined by luxury and heedless expense, by want of calculation, and a worthy aim as the 1,000,000 households in the land, and the only cure for it, as for them, is in a rigid economy, a stern and more than Spartan simplicity of life. Spartan simplicity of life and elevation of purpose. It lives too fast. Men think that it is essential that the nation has commerce. I was saying that you should be, when the GDP drops, you should be happy. Say, oh, great, the news came out. GDP dropped. Then if GDP goes up, you say, oh, it was a terrible day. GDP went up. Men think that it is essential that the nation has commerce and export ice and talk through a telegraph and ride 30 miles an hour. Without a doubt whether they do or not. But whether we should live like baboons or like men is a little uncertain. If we do not get out sleepers and forge rails and devote days and nights to the work, but go to tinkering upon our lives to improve them, who will build railroads? And if railroads are not built, how shall we get to heaven in season? But if we stay at home and mind our business, who will want railroads? Is that saying don't fly very often in the airport? Don't go to the airport and fly. But because of the greenhouse gas. Or maybe when you fly to Europe, you should stay longer, like a month or two, instead of going on the weekend to Paris. That's not right. We do not ride on the railroad, it rides upon us. Did you ever think what those sleepers are that underlie the railroad? Each one is a man, an Irishman or a Yankee man. The rails are laid on them, and they are covered with sand, and the cars run smoothly over them. They are sound sleepers, I assure you, and every few years a new lot is laid down and run over. So that if some have the pleasure of riding on a rail, others have the misfortune of being ridden upon. And when they run over a man that is awake, walking in his sleep, supernumerary sleeper in the wrong position, and wake him up, they suddenly stop the cars and make a hue and cry about it, as if this were an exception. I am glad to know that it takes a gang of men for every 5 miles to keep the sleepers down and level in their beds as it is, for this is a sign that they may sometime get up again. Why should we live with such hurry and waste of life? Why should we live with such hurry and waste of life? Waste. Hurry. To me, that's like I see it as when I see somebody driving the car fast, I say that they're like Russians. It's like Russians. We are determined to be starved before we are hungry. Men say that a stitch in time saves 9, and so they take 1,000 stitches today to save 9 tomorrow. As for work, we haven't any of any consequence. We have the St. Vitus's dance and cannot possibly keep our heads still. If I should only give a few pulls at the parish bell rope, or as for a fire, that is, without setting the bell, there is hardly a man on his farm in the outskirts of Concord, notwithstanding that press of engagements which was his excuse so many times this morning, nor a boy nor a woman, I might almost say, but would forsake all and follow that sound, not mainly to save property from the flames, but if we will confess the truth, much more to see it burn, since burn it must, and we must be it known, not set it on fire, or see it put out and have a hand in it. If that is done as handsomely, even if it were the parish church itself. I'm trying to hurry through the reading, so I don't waste your time. It's a waste of time for me to read slowly or give comments. So it seems that I'm a time waster and I hurry too much. Hardly a man takes a half-hour's nap after dinner, but when he wakes he holds up his head and asks, "What's the news?" as if the rest of mankind had stood his sentinels. Some give directions to be waked every half hour, doubtless for no other purpose than to pay for it. They tell what they have dreamed. After a night's sleep, the news is as indispensable as the breakfast. Pray tell me anything new that has happened to a man anywhere on this globe. I say that really no, almost every day there's actually no news. So I say, why are we watching the news when there isn't any? They could come on the news and say, well, today nothing happened. Nothing important happened today. So we have nothing to report. And he reads it over his coffee and rolls that a man has had his eyes gouged out this morning on the Wachito River, never dreaming the while that he lives in the dark unfathomed mammoth cave of this world and has but the rudiment of an eye himself. He's quasi-enlightened or is enlightened, apparently. He's either 1 in a million or 1 in 100 million. I don't know if Thoreau is a saint or not. I'm not through with him either way. For my part, I could easily do without the post office. I think that there are very few important communications made through it. To speak critically, I never received more than 1 or 2 letters in my life. I wrote this some years ago that were worth the postage. The penny post is commonly an institution through which you seriously offer a man that penny for his thoughts, which is so often safely offered in jest. The only letter I got was from my Aunt Martha Jean. No one writes anymore. It's old-fashioned. Alice sent a WhatsApp.
Yeah.
What's WhatsApp? WhatsApp? Oh, look at that. Wow. Is it duck or turkey? A magnificent duck. Celebrating Thanksgiving at noon with Ducky. Ducky. Huge duck. Where's a huge duck? How ducky. I should say how ducky is the duck. See, they have a duck. There's a duck. Dookie. Duck. How? Thanksgiving, interesting in Germany. Could be pre-Christmas, practice Christmas.
Or maybe Alice celebrates it.
Alice is having Thanksgiving because her side of the American side of the family, half of the family, is celebrating Thanksgiving. Though the Indians themselves actually mourn Thanksgiving. The native peoples mourn. They regret helping the pilgrims. The activists, some of the current activist Indians, they are not happy with what happened to them, and they mourn Thanksgiving.
It's like one celebrates the victory, the other celebrates the defeat. The other remembers the defeat in a way.
Well, we're proposing to give everything back to the Indians. I don't know if you're willing to give all of your property back to the Native American peoples.
Have no property.
I don't have much property, so I'm willing to give it all to the Native peoples. In fact, I dedicate the revenue from this YouTube video to the Native peoples. What revenue? I only have, what was the last one? Had 2 views or something? 1 view?
Nobody paid anything.
Well, that's insulting to give them the revenue from my YouTube video. Until after I become famous in the year 2500. 2500. This is, I'm reading this for the year 2500. Well, that's how long it'll take to get enough views to pay them back.
Maybe 2015.
But that's a mechanical device. He's against mechanical details. Using devices. And he says the news, nothing happened in the news. He turned on the news and there wasn't any news. For my part, I could easily do without the post office. And he only got one letter like me. He only got 2 letters worthwhile.
But they didn't have any, when he said turn on the news, they didn't have radio.
Oh, they read the newspaper, though. I wrote this some years ago that were worth the postage. The penny post is commonly an institution through which you seriously offer a man that penny for his thoughts, which is so often safely offered and just, and I am sure that I never read any memorable news in a newspaper. If I read of one man robbed or murdered or killed by accident, or one house burned, or one vessel wrecked, and one steamship blown up, and one cow run over on the railroad, Western Railroad, and one mad dog killed, or one lot of grasshoppers in the winter, we never need read another. See, I actually hurry through the unimportant news. I don't want to waste my listeners' time. So I hurry through the details of Walden. One is enough if you are acquainted with the principle. What do you care for a myriad instances and applications? To a philosopher, all news, as it is called, is gossip. Do you feel sometimes that all the news we listen to is gossip? It's actually not.
That's how they present
it.
That's how they deal with.
It's actually not completed because it's like speculative. Like they'll say there's impeachment hearings of Trump. Okay, and we could say, well, why don't you let us know when he is finally impeached, when he's impeached. Then we'll say, a news event occurred when he was completed, and they completed the process of impeachment. And so the process of the gossip related to his impeachment is technically not news. To a philosopher, all news, as is called, is gossip, and they who edit and read it are old women over their tea. Do you feel that sometimes the news is like old women?
Because you see, old women, they don't have much to do.
Over the tea, yet.
It's for people who don't have anything else to do.
Well, they have this like interpretive, speculative news, like something is.
If you're a poet, an artist, mostly, you think you're gonna go to the news? Maybe a little bit.
We could look at the political positions the day before the election only, and then vote, and not follow the election at all. Yet not if you are greedy after this gossip. There was such a rush, as I hear the other day at one of the offices to learn the foreign news by the last arrival, that several large squares of plate glass belonging to the establishment were broken by the pressure, news which I seriously think a ready wit might write a 12-month or 12-year beforehand with sufficient accuracy, as for Spain, for instance, if you know how to throw in Don Carlos and Infanta and Don Pedro and Seville and Granada from time to time in the right proportions. They may have changed the names a little since I saw the papers and serve up a bullfight when other entertainments failed. You could just serve up a bullfight like a sports show. You could give the sports news.
Yeah,
Why don't we just watch the summary of the sports news, of the soccer news? They could replace bullfighting with soccer. Instead of a bullfight, they could have the men fight in a soccer game. Serve up a bullfight when other entertainments fail would be true to the letter and give us as good an idea of the exact state or ruin of things in Spain as the most succinct and lurid reports under this head in the newspapers, and as for England, almost the most last sufficient scrap of news from that quarter was the Revolution of 1649, and if you have learned the history of her crops, for an average year, they never need attend to that thing again unless your speculations are of a merely pecuniary character. I guess if you're pecuniary, though, dear, if you're like a businessman or a Wall Street trader, you need to watch the news because you're speculating upon it. So if I'm going to be a stock market trader, I have to watch the news continuously, all the time, and never stop. I have to get up at 3 a.m. Well, I want to see what's happening in Tokyo and what happened in Tokyo, and you know, and I want to know what's been happening in Europe, and and then I have to be at the trading desk at 9:30. But it really starts before that. And then at night, you have the Tokyo Open, so you really shouldn't go to sleep at all. You can continuously watch the news. There's some people, they developed systematic trading, electronic trading, or computerized trading to do all that for them. But then you could spend all your time coding the model. You could speculate on the code. Well, you could speculate on the code in your trading model around the clock as well.
The computers do trading?
Yeah, they can even read the news. But they tend to prefer to make the news by crashing the market and then picking up on their option positions. If one may judge who rarely looks into the newspapers, nothing new does ever happen in foreign parts, a French Revolution not accepted. What news? How much more important to know what that is which was never old. Uh-oh. It's too loud.
Call from band name unknown.
Spam. Who's
Call
spam?
from this building. Band name unknown.
Who's spam?
No idea.
Who is spam?
Hello. Please leave a message after the tone.
Who is spam?
They get going to all the hard calling. Why don't they leave a message?
Kyo-he-hu, great dignitary of the state of Wu, sent an old man to Kon-su to know his news. Chuan-su caused the messenger to be seated near him and questioned him in these terms. What is your master doing? The messenger, is that Chuan-su? Chuan-su is the famous person. We seem interrupted. We're going to talk to Alice in 30 minutes, maybe. What time is it? 30. 30 minutes. That wasn't Alice. She's not spam. Swansu, what is your master doing? The messenger answered with respect, my master desires to diminish the number of his faults, but he cannot come to the end of them. Could you say that about us? Like, what are we doing? We're just diminishing our own faults, but we couldn't come to the end of them. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to diminish my faults, but I have so many that keeps me busy. The messenger being gone, the philosopher remarked, what a worthy messenger! What a worthy messenger! The preacher, instead of vexing the ears of drowsy farmers on their day of rest at the end of the week, for Sunday is a fit conclusion of an ill-spent week, and not the fresh and brave beginning of a new one, with this one other traggle tale of a sermon, should shout with a thundering voice, pause, avast, avast. Why so seeming fast, but deadly slow? This is lively stuff in a way. Shams and delusions are esteemed for soundest truths, while reality is fabulous. He's saying that this new stuff is like esteemed as important, while he's saying reality is fabulous. Right? That's like saying something fabulous happened on your phone, and I'm saying, look at the sunrise, the moon or something. The moon had a bunch of planets coming with it. Which planets were with the moon?
Venus, Jupiter, Saturn.
All of those? Yeah. They are all together.
All three on yesterday.
Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter. They were in a fabulous reality together. While we were looking at our phone, this happened. Remember how the Russian guy used to say that these young guys were looking at their phones and this fabulously beautiful woman walked by and they didn't see her.
How would you do that with the moon? The moon is out there, beautiful.
You tell me that I'm looking at my phone and you said, this beautiful woman just walked by and you missed her.
Yeah, I did that one.
You've told me that. That I was full of shams and delusions and only looking at my phone. If men would steadily observe realities only, and not allow themselves to be deluded, life, to compare it with such things as we know, would be like a fairy tale in the Arabian Nights entertainments. If we respected only what is inevitable and has to be right to be, music and poetry would resound along the streets. When we are unhurried and wise. Is there a way to be unhurried and wise? We perceive that only great and worthy things have any permanent and absolute existence, that petty fears and petty pleasures are but the shadow of the reality.
Inherit, it's actually a
Unhurried?
state of being, how you are. It doesn't matter if you're busy or not.
Yeah, you can be.
Sometimes
you could be unhurried.
You don't have much anything to do anyway. But sometimes you do so much, and you don't win.
Yeah, you can be hurried. It has nothing to do with your task at hand. You can actually have a lot of things to do and be unhurried. You could have 300 things to do and do them unhurried.
And still do them. I don't mean not to do them.
Well, that's like you're like
there are people who just not do them.
You're like a Zen master, or you're like a Kung Fu master. You could fight 100 people and not be in a hurry to. Like when you play tennis, you don't have to run hurriedly after the ball.
Also, to a degree, you have to also agree with those things.
Sometimes
if you don't agree with those things you have to do, then
I slow down my hitting the tennis ball. Like I just sort of look at the ball and
You
I'll
seem like
say,
you enjoyed the game yesterday.
I'm not going
You
to
said
hurry.
it was slow.
We played tennis slowly. And it was old-fashioned old man tennis. I played tennis with an old man.
Because I am.
He's 82 and he's wise and unhurried. So I play purposely with old men tennis, unhurriedly and wise. While they give me tips on how to play. This is always exhilarating and sublime. Playing this kind of tennis is always exhilarating and sublime. Do you think he is 82?
Who? Oh,
The guy I played with. He's my tennis master. My tennis coach. He plays very unhurriedly and wisely. We don't play whack the ball hard, we usually finesse it or spin it. By closing the eyes and slumbering and consenting to be deceived by shows, men establish and confirm their daily lives of routine and habit everywhere, which still is built on purely illusionary foundations. Children who play life discern its true law and relations more clearly than men. Do you think that children playing life,
more natural,
who fail to live it worthily, but who think that they are wiser by experience, that is, by failure? I have read in a Hindu book, you think that basically Thoreau is like a Hindu? I have read in a Hindu book that there was a king's son.
Do you like any of that cakes?
Yeah, I have to finish and I'll come over.
So I should keep them because I keep eating.
I don't want to finish the reading. There was a king's son who, being expelled in infancy from his native city, was brought up by a forester, and growing up to maturity in that state imagined himself to belong to the barbarous race with which he lived. One of his father's ministers, having discovered him, revealed to him what he was, and the misconception of his character was removed, and he knew himself to be a prince. So soul, continues the Hindu philosopher, from the circumstances in which it is placed, mistakes its own character until the truth is revealed to it by some holy teacher. Then it knows itself to be Brahma. I perceive that we inhabitants of New England live this mean life, that we do because our vision does not penetrate the surface of things. We think that is which appears to be. If a man should walk through this town and see only the reality, where, think you, would the mill dam go to? If he should give us an account of the realities he beheld there, we should not recognize the place in his description. Look at a meeting house, or a courthouse, or a jail, or a shop, or a dwelling house, and say what that thing really is before a true gaze, and they will all go to pieces in your account of them. Men esteem truth remote, in the outskirts of the system, behind the faintest star, before Adam and after the last atom, and in eternity there is indeed something true and sublime. That was a mechanical device. But all these times and places and occasions are now and here. God himself culminates in the present moment and will never be more divine in the lapse of all of the ages, and we are enabled to apprehend to all what is sublime and noble only by the perpetual instilling and drenching of the reality that surrounds us. The universe constantly and obediently answers to our conceptions, whether we travel fast or slow. The track is laid for us. Let us spend our lives in conceiving them. The poet and the artist never yet had so fair and noble a design, but some of his prosperity at least could accomplish it. Will you read a little more and then I'll stop? Let us spend one day as deliberately as nature. He had he had opened this reading with saying how he went to the woods to live deliberately. Let us spend one day as deliberately as nature and not be thrown off the track by every nutshell and mosquito wing that falls on the rails. Let us rise early and fast and break fast. Remember I used to say break your fast?
I'm just laughing now because
Why are you laughing?
somebody proposed that we should all, everywhere on earth, turn off the lights once a year and people to contemplate the sky. When I wrote that once a year also we celebrate sunrise and sunset, and now I think just once a year we should
Sunrise and
celebrate
sunset.
Every day.
When you're out west traveling and camping, you contemplate sunrise and sunset every day. Let us rise early and fast and break fast gently and without perturbation. Let company come and let company go. Let the bells ring and the children cry, determined to make a day of it. Why should we knock under?
To make a day of it.
Why should we knock under and go in with the stream? Let us not be upset and overwhelmed in that terrible rapid and whirlpool called a dinner.
I
It's
think
waited in the
he
meridian
has a lot to
shallows.
play in the hippie time, the hippies, Woodstock and all that. That's what they did.
Hippies?
That's what the young people did then. Maybe Thoreau was under...
Well, he is... You would think
influencing them.
The nature people and the outdoor people probably like him, and the hikers and the campers.
No, I mean the 60s when the hippies went out and so. Don't you think they were influenced by Thoreau, maybe?
Oh yeah, it's all in the. He's all in that tradition of. What do you call it? Metaphysical. Weather this danger, and you are safe, for the rest of the way up is downhill with unrelaxed nerves and with morning vigor. Sail by it, looking another way, tied to the mast like Ulysses. If the engine whistles, let it whistle till it is hoarse for its pains. If the bell rings, why should we run? Why do you run when the bell rang? We will consider what kind of music they are like. Let us settle ourselves and work and wedge our feet downward through the mud and slush of opinion and prejudice and tradition, delusion and appearance, that illusion which covers the globe, through Paris and London, through New York and Boston and Concord, through church and state, through poetry and philosophy and religion, till we come to a hard bottom and rocks in place which we can call reality, and say, this is, and no mistake, and then begin, having a point d'approuve. There. It's a French word, point d'approuve. Point d'appui. Point d'approuve. Point d'approuve.
Appui.
Appui.
To hold on.
Point d'appui.
Point d'appui. Something to hold on.
Something to hold on, something to hold on below freshet and frost and fire, a place where you might find a wall or state and set a lamppost safely, and perhaps a gauge, and not a nilometer, but a realometer. He's got a realometer, that future ages might know how deep a freshet of shams and appearances had gathered from time to time. He's saying we should have a fake news detector. If you had an AI program that checks every single fact of everything said, and you install it at Google, and it becomes a fake news detector, and it could filter out all the fake news. A realometer, that future ages might know how deep a freshet of shams and appearances had gathered from time to time. If you stand right fronting and face to face to a fact, you will see the sun glimmer on both its surfaces as if it were a sea meter, and feel its sweet edge dividing you through the heart and marrow, and so you will happily conclude your mortal career. Be it life or death, we crave only reality. If we are really dying, let us hear the rattle of our throats and feel cold in the extremities. If we are alive, let us go about our business. Time is but the stream I go a-fishing in. I drink at it, but while I drink, I see the sandy bottom and detect how shallow it is. Its thin current slides away, but eternity remains. I will drink deeper. Fish in the sky, whose bottom is pebbly with stars. I cannot count one. I know not the first letter of the alphabet. I have always been regretting that I was not as wise as the day I was born. The intellect is a cleaver. It discerns and rifts its way into the secret of things. I do not wish to be any more busy with my hands than is necessary. My head is hands and feet. I feel all my best faculties concentrated in it. Well, he's just saying if your tension is up in your third eye or up in your head, it's going to be better. I feel all my best faculties concentrated in it. My instincts tell me that my head is an organ for burrowing, as some creatures use their snout and forepaws, and with it I would mine and burrow my way through these hills. I think that the richest vein is somewhere hereabouts, so by the divining rod and thin rising vapors I judge, and here I will begin to mine. He's mining at his third eye, or in his head, with his kundalini brought up to the top of his head. Apparently. This is the ending right before he says reading. The next section is on reading. We're talking about where I lived and what I lived for. What? You liked it? We learned a French word, so learning French through Thoreau. We learned about how to live deliberately in nature. And we learned now not to hurry and to be wise while we're not hurrying, and how to play tennis. And how to trade the stock market. But you'd have to watch the news all the time. But you need a realometer, which is like a fake news detector. So, yeah, right. Didn't say that at all. What I said is not true at all, because it's like fake news reading. This is a fake news reading of Thoreau, done not very thoroughly. So this is unthoroughly read Thoreau. And we're not through reading him either. So we're unthorough and not through, and not. I could be thrown off the YouTube for this. Don't you think? Yeah. Yeah. Very good.